Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Omkar Nikam, the founder and CEO of Access Hub. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome to our new podcast, Nexus, the new voice powered by Access Hub. After the success of the Space, Defense, and Security podcast, we're taking the conversation further. Nexus is where industries intersect from space, defense, maritime, aviation, energy, and media broadcasting technologies. We bring you the insights, strategies, and stories shaping tomorrow's world all in one place. This isn't just new podcast, it's your connection point to the future. This is Nexus. Let's dive in. Thank you very much and enjoy the episodes. Hello and welcome to the new episode of the podcast. So today we have a returning guest with whom we had recorded a podcast, I believe, almost a year and a half ago, possibly even more than that. And at that time, she was a PhD student. Now she has evolved a lot, and together we came and we thought it's time to basically share the experiences that we had in our career, because I believe the kind of ecosystem that we are driving both through Access Hub as well as through our career paths, it's not something very straightforward process. A lot of people have always asked me, especially the students, that how did you end up doing what you're doing at the moment? And I believe my colleague Neha, she's also at the same spot where she also receives the same kind of questions. And that's the reason we decided to come up with the series of podcast episodes, which will be flashed on a space defense security podcast, as well as this new podcast series that we are starting, where we'll be sharing primarily the experiences as well as the pathways to how to scale up your path into the non-technical domain, especially for the defense, international relations, as well as with a mix of geopolitics. If you have background from of, especially if you're having a background of BA, that is Bachelor of Arts in that political science, or even if you're coming from maybe BCom or even any other domain, still how you can make your path into this sector is something that we'll be primarily sharing our experiences through, as well as bringing on the experts too. So yeah, with that, I would like to kickstart with today's episode. And first, I would like to welcome on board our today's guest, Neha Mishra. Hi, Neha. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Omkar. Thank you so much for having me back again on this, and I'm happy with from the last time
Yes.
till today. As you rightly said, it's been a journey, and you have seen it, and we have talked through it. So
Yes.
I'm happy we could do something today, and hoping that this can bring more people inspired and have the same journey or their own journey,
Yes.
but we can be a filler kind of a support for them. So yeah, looking forward today.
Absolutely. It's great to have you back as well. So before we kickstart with our today's topic, I would like to first take a deep dive into your journey again, briefly maybe, because of course our audience knows you because you were one of the early guests in our podcast series. But I think a lot has changed since then. So it would be great if you can just reintroduce yourself briefly about how and what your journey has been, and basically how did you end up doing what you're doing at the moment.
Sure. So, hi everyone. First of all, as all of you know now that my name is Neha Mishra. Right now, I wear a few hats. Actually, I'm a sector head of defense and security exports at British High Commission. I'm a visiting associate fellow at Center for Air Power Studies, and also doing my PhD from Delhi University. But honestly, if you would have told me 10 years ago that I would be working in defense and international relations and having these kind of profiles with me in some time, I would not have believed you. But I think this is a journey I would be happy to share with you all. If I go back in my undergraduate time, I was very sorted. My plan was very simple, that I want to do a B.Ed, be a school teacher maybe, and very safe and predictable kind of journey. But during my masters, my tilt towards research got enhanced. I kind of found myself more into research interest than teaching people, and at even one point I was more confused that should I do school teacher thing, or I should try to do go into research, or also as every humanity student does, thinking of giving a UPSC exam. I also worked and read the whole Lakshmikant book cover to cover twice, thinking maybe I can do it. But after some time, I realized this is not my cup of tea. I should not. And then after focusing on my research interests, I gave UGC net. I got it. I gave entrances. It was obviously very rigorous, so many entrances, and I got in University of Delhi. With time here, I started working on my research skills. I was working on India China geoeconomics competition in my MPhil, but major learning skill came up with my think tank internships at Institute of Chinese Studies and Indian Council of World Affairs. It gave me my first taste of foreign policy work. And then came the US China trade war. Everybody was talking about how rare earth elements being used by China, how China is doing this and that. And I was very fascinated how a single rare earth element thing is being used by China, or giving a geoeconomic leverage over US without having any political or military force used. And imagine me being from a humanities background, trying to suddenly understand the periodic table and also learning about mining, metallurgy. And because I really wanted to understand why these minerals are becoming such important, and this curiosity brought me develop a kind of a proposal which was very mandatory to apply for a position in Center for Air Power Studies. I applied, I got it. I started working there, more exposure, more writing, more publishing. And I was very lucky to be there, mentored by very renowned Air Marshal Anil Chopra. He really pushed me to think larger, think beyond writing only. And I ended up working on my first book project. I also became associate editor of two books along with him. And later the journey started, got a new turn. I joined Society of Indian Defense Manufacturers, and frankly, I didn't even think that they will take me because I was an academic researcher person. But there my journey started, and I turned from a quite academic person to leading industry delegations to the other countries, and also framing the policy inputs for Ministry of Defense, which was a kind of a different thing for me. And the transformation from classroom person to develop myself to a policy table person was honestly very very defining moment of my life. And now today I am in my role as in British High Commission, and in addition I'm continuing my PhD. I continuously work on myself. I realize this path was not linear at all, and even in the future the new pathways, the new journey, maybe bottlenecks, maybe new opportunities will come up. But I have realized that I never thought that I need a engineering degree or a kind of other technical background to be in this field. And with this, I think even with a pure humanities background, you can carve out your experience. You can carve out your journey in this, and that's the message I hope students whoever listening today will take away. Your pathways might look unconventional today, but that doesn't mean that it's not valid for you. So that's all what I would like to share with you about my journey.
Fabulous. I believe that's quite a huge journey. And as we proceed with the several episodes, not only this one, we'll try to dissect each of the experiences which Neha has, and of course the one I have as well. Together, we'll be kind of making a fusion of our experiences and try to share with on a case study basis as well how and what things we had to face in terms of challenges, how the opportunities came. I think Neha just mentioned some of her mentors as well from CAPS, and it's very tough to find mentors these days because everyone is in a kind of a race to dominate and rule over the content and everything that they're planning in their own path. So it's extremely tough. And we'll be also mentioning about this fact that how to possibly find the right mentors as well. And I think I really appreciate Neha for starting this initiative, and this is where our conversation sparked in that we should basically start a series of podcast episodes on this to share it in a full-fledged manner. So I hope we serve as a good mentors, especially Neha, because she's the one who came up with this idea of sharing the experiences. So with that, I would like to basically kick off today's episode, that is breaking in pathways into defense and international relations for humanities students. So today's, of course, episode is focused on humanities students, but not necessarily that if you're a student from the BCom or the BSc side, you won't be able to get into IR or geopolitics. I know loads of people. I myself come from bachelor's of science background. I come from geology, earth sciences, where I did like R&D level work, and then I basically entered this domain. So there is no such thing that there are no barriers, there are no regulations that if you're from any other background you can't enter this sector. It's just that for the basic understanding, we have kept this name of the episode for humanities students. So yeah, to kick start with the episode, so Neha, I would like to ask from the students' perspective first. So many humanities students want careers with real world impact, but don't know where to basically start. So, what kinds of specialized trainings or programs can help them break into defense and international relations domain, from your perspective?
Sure. Uh, I think for me, I also when I was starting, like you, I had the same questions in my mind. Where exactly I should start? And but frankly, I didn't even have the idea that we can actually go into this kind of career, because we never had any mentor or any person to tell us what is the real starting point for this. So but my suggestion or my first step would be that you don't have to think about making a big impact in initially. You have to take smaller steps, but meaningful steps. The truth is, you don't need to, like, have it figured out all in the day one. You have to understand what is the bigger goal first. Obviously, initially we don't know what is the bigger goal. We realize with the time being coming, but there is something which is aligning with your bigger goal always. For instance, I'll give you my example. When I was in my masters, I knew, okay, research is something I want to do, so I started gaining the skills related to that. Obviously, your degree is going to give you enough knowledge. Your professor are going to give you enough conceptual background, but the skills you have to work on yourself. So the first step should be to focus on maybe a small course, a certificate course, you can say maybe research methodology, or writing skills, which I mean, there are multiple courses on Coursera. There are multiple courses which are being offered by think tanks. You can take the case of Takshila. They have a short-term certificate course on public policy. So these kind of examples, we have so many, which can give you one first step towards that direction. And then in addition of these domestic courses, there are international courses also. There are online modules available, also sometimes free, sometimes you have to pay, but you can figure it out how much you want to invest in this kind of skill. But these are the things which you can take. Second, I would say taking an internship. So either you go to a government internship or a think tank internship or a university internship. There are so many stages at its level, but which we will obviously discuss in our upcoming podcast series. But I would say that this is something where you won't only gain the skill, you will also gain the network. You will also gain the right mentors, which I mentioned, that there you will see people, meet people. And I feel in academics or in any field, I think without having that network or speaking to people, right people, you there are so many doors which won't open for you. So this is the second. And once you have enough skill, maybe you should try to knock down the good fellowships opportunities. There are domestic fellowships or being offered by multiple organizations, and then you have the international fellowships available as well, available, all funded, all supported by the organization. You can travel, you can explore, you can learn and come back. So these three things, I think, are the main pillar which makes real world impact. Once you have either if one of them, you have the second one already open, and then the third one, and you have, by the third one, you have that much skill with you that you can open up and get any kind of job which you require. So my suggestion is, take small steps, but take meaningful steps every day. That is the only way you can make real world impact in your career. Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with you on this point, and I think you have partially answered this question, but I would like to just dig a little bit into this. If a humanities student is curious about working in defense and IR means, again, I would like to quote it. It's international relations. I'll be taking the abbreviation IR throughout the podcast now. So where should they start? Are there any specific entry points, internships, or fellowships to consider from your perspective? You can briefly mention this. You don't have to be
Yeah.
explanatory in these terms, but yeah, briefly, if you can mention it, that would be great.
Yeah. So if we are talking only international relations, major thing is build your conceptual base. Do not take things like this. Okay, this is done. My degree is done. I'm done with the liberalism, international political order, and all those main concepts which people try to run away from when we are in our undergraduate graduation or graduation time. So this is where you start with. When you have that base strong, wherever you are going, you are talking with a right and strong perspective. If other person is quoting something to you, you will understand, you will know the vocabulary, you will have the vocabulary right. So that is first thing. And about the internships, there are internships available by Ministry of External Affairs. There are think tanks which I mentioned to you. There are defense think tanks, but at the same time, we have ORF, we have IDSA, we have CEW, we have so many small think tanks which we can discuss in later series. But I can totally tell you that this is only think tank journey which you can explore for first time. But at the same time, there are so many other opportunities which are available online, which, if you can see, there are international organizations which offer you hybrid or online internships or online part-time kind of opportunities as well. So you can explore those as well. So there are opportunities, but you have to take your experience one by one, because some of the internships don't even count if you don't have the prior experience. The experience count. So try to find out where which internship don't require experience for the first time. I can understand, I can generate my skill from this, and then go for those which require really high skill, or also some background recommendation and so on. And yeah, we can discuss more about these in detail later.
Absolutely, and because the mentorship is extremely important, I think briefly we touched upon this part at the introduction point of this episode as well. So, from your perspective, what role does mentorship, whether through university networks or structured programs, play in helping humanities graduated students land their first role? It can be both an internship or it can be a full fledged job as well. From your perspective, please feel free to answer it.
So honestly, mentorship has been one of the biggest turning points in my journey. When you come from any background, we're not even talking here humanities, and you are trying to step into a field, in a field like defense or international relation or anything. The truth is, you don't even know the right people unless you have the right mentor with you. And for instance, when I started, my professors were there who really pushed me to go for my first internship. I was not even sure that if I am worth for going for something like internship, and they will even entertain me. But I remember one of my professor pushed me that you should go for it, because universities will give you exposure, but think tanks or internships will give you right kind of understanding or outer world understanding. And I think later my professor pushed me to write more, publish more, and I did the same. And later I think I have been pushed mostly by mentors to be here today. I remember once my supervisor said that if you want to make a career in academics, like in academics or in anything, try to make a habit to read one article a day. So it was like, okay, one article a day is fine, but it really stayed with me that okay, one article a day means okay, no, don't come and read one article. It means do something related to your career. Give at least an hour or 2 hours, whatever allows you with your full-time job if you have, but make it consistent, and that consistency will take you very very long way. And I think I still follow the same. I whenever even one day I don't study after my full-time job, I feel, oh my god, I did something wrong. It's like a guilty thing. So you have to make that thing with you, that you feel very bad if you're not doing enough for your interest area. So this is what thing a mentor kind of mentorship can bring to you. They will teach you what is the right way, what is the right way of looking at things, right perspective. And during my caps time also, Air Marshal Anil Chopra, there was Manpreet Sethi, who is a nuclear expert. I think she was the major inspiration to me, and she told me that if any day if you think that okay, I know enough, that is the last day of your growth. So the moment you will start thinking this is not going to grow for you. And I think, yeah, that is right. The mom, you should always think that I don't know anything, and that is how you will continue growing. So mentors give you those lines which which stays with you. They give you that push, which maybe a friend. It's not required to be a senior person. It can be a friend, it can be a colleague who knows better things, who can guide you to apply for this application, apply for this is something good. And that can be also through LinkedIn. People try to reach out to people on LinkedIn and end up
Yes.
taking really good advice. I have also done myself. So I think just seek out, just try to build that with people. You have to be more extrovert. Sometimes you might feel shy, but this is how you can build yourself, only by bringing. And I would say that people are very very happy when you ask them, can you guide me. People feel okay, yeah, please, I will be happy. But if you're not asking, nobody wants to say without asking, and right. So I think
Yes.
go for it. Go, make connections and take the mentors very seriously.
Absolutely. I'd like to just add on to Neha's point. So, what you mean is like mentors really help you embrace the word called habit in your ecosystem. If you make something a habit, I think it stays with you for life. As you mentioned about the learning habit, you were mentioning that after your job you need to learn something. So I think habit is a thing that comes out of a mentorship, and I completely agree with her. Mentors are not only there to advise you, but they are there to help you embrace the habits as well into the ecosystem.
Exactly.
So yeah, and to proceed ahead with a kind of, I would say, a follow-up question, could you walk us through some common roles in this fields like analysts, policy advisors, or maybe even a diplomat, and how someone without a technical background can fit into this ecosystem? I would say I'm not completely the right person because I come from a technical background. So I often observe this, that having conversation in the defense tech side, it's a bit more easier for me than my colleagues who come from the non-tech background. So I think it will be really highly appreciable if you could answer this question in a good way, because a kind of guests we also had on our podcast are primarily coming from the highly technical background. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your answer, Neha.
Thank you. I think that is right. Actually, mostly there is a misconception also, but also right as well, that people feel that if you want to go into defense, you must be from a technical background or a military background person, or someone who is very much aware of those details, which is right. You have to be very much aware when you're talking, when you're at a table where everybody knows what a missile means, what this means, what that means. So a person who has no knowledge might feel, backsided, or maybe out of the room thing. But that is one thing. But if you think, that's simply not the full truth. There are a lot of roles where a humanities background is also required. It's not like only technical field people can glow there, or can shine there. Take the role of a research analyst. This is usually the first entry point for a lot of student. You have to write briefs, you have to track global developments, and you have to also analyze how our policy decisions could affect the global foreign policy as well as the defense relation. So for that, a technical person will have obviously a right understanding, but the way of putting things together, connecting the dots together, and making it into a gist of final decision making would be a role, or would be a kind of a good skill for a humanities student, because we are getting trained for it uh, before the time we ever know. But the only thing, we don't know how to utilize those skills into the real time. We have those skills, but we don't know, okay, this is something technical, I should not get into it. But we can try. And there are other kind of roles like policy advisors, program officers. There are industries, the defense industries, which seek the role of program officers, who just run the whole flow of these things and make sure that things are growing in a effective manner. There is relationship manager as well for organizations, which is not a technical role. It is something which you need as a social behavior. You need to develop that uh, reputation of the institution. And then high commissions, embassies have policy advisors, policy analysts, program managers, and so many roles are there which requires nothing, just a good hold of your writing, of your language, of your understanding how to connect multiple dots together. Because a kind of a concept, or for instance, right now we have this US China tariff war happening, or US in India equation happening, where US is trying to put tariffs on India. So it is a case where there will be multiple perspective. Military person has multiple different perspective, policy person has different perspective, diplomat has different perspective, government person has different perspective. But how we think, how we do it, a researcher combine all the perspective together and come up with a general perspective, to understand all the perspective together and make a case where a decision can be made out of it. So where this is your skill, which a technical person might not be good in. So I think for us, the humanities people, we have to understand how we can generate our skills to make recommendations, policy choices, for not only for the think tanks, but also for the government people. You have the examples that MEA has so many short departments, where there are the there is triple CS, there is a different kind of sectoral or theme kind of people who research, who analyze and submit those things to the ministers or even diplomats. So there also, they need people who understand how to do it. And overall, I would say that we as humanities background people, should not think we are kind of in competition, or any thing behind the technical background people. We are here to complement this. We can complement their work, we can learn from them as well. This is something Even I will give you my example. I have never done anything in defense, but when I started, I understood. I am still learning, and there are people who will be happy to exchange that knowledge. You can understand from them, then you can share your knowledge with them. So you will from there also you can gain the confidence that nothing is impossible. Nobody knew from the start only, where even a technical person doesn't know how these things work, but they learn with the time. So you can do the same. So there is no barrier, there is no stoppage for a humanities background person. You just have to understand what kind of role is fine and where you can enter into this domain. And once you enter, you have to continuously work on yourself. You don't have to stop. Okay, I have arrived. Okay, I should stop working on myself. You have to. And just I think with time you can all no, nobody can make a difference you are from technical or not technical background. So yeah, that's what I feel.
I would like to support Neha's answer and add something to it. Coming from both the backgrounds, I have my academic background both in first in like bachelor's masters in science and tech, and then again into one master's into the humanities like international relations, security and strategy as well. uh, I always say to this to people that if science and tech is basically the car, you know and humanities or maybe any other non-technical background is basically the fuel. The fuel can be petrol or EV or anything, and any kind of basically energy that basically pushes the car, accelerates it. Because science and tech really brings a lot of things on the table, but humanities especially teaches how to be strategic in decision making. I mean, you can have Nikola Tesla, Einstein, everyone on one table, but how to utilize such brains strategically, leverage the knowledge, and put up a decisions one after another in a strategic manner to gain advantage in the international politics is something that humanities teaches. So it's a kind of a long game which is invisible. Like science and tech is very much visible. Okay, SpaceX is flying rockets. Okay, it's visible. But when a prime minister or a president of a country takes a decision, or even intelligence agencies, when they provide any kind of intel and based on which the decisions are taken, the common public is absolutely unaware how the decision making has been done internally. And that is a mechanism which is being provided by the humanities people. Like humanities people are like, inside of the car, they are running the whole system, but they're invisible to to the whole world. The outside of the car, that is science and tech, which is also important. Without that, the car won't be existing. So they are the front end part, and these are the back end part. So the back end is also extremely important, without which the front end can't really run well. So that's what I would like to mention in briefly. Correct me, Neha, if I'm wrong in this.
No, no, absolutely. I think so. That's what I said, that both the fields complement each other,
Yes,
and you can learn from each other. But at the same time, you should not feel that the field is not for you. You just have to understand where you can fit in and make your own space there. Yeah.
absolutely. And just moving ahead with the last question of this part one of our episode. Uh, Humanities students often excel in research, writing, and critical thinking. How do these skills translate into the day to day demands of defense and IR work?
Yeah. So this is actually where students of humanities have a real edge, as I explained how they have the
Yes,
writing skills and those things. So take research for example. On a day-to-day basis, you are flooded with information. You have reports, policy papers, speeches, sometimes straight figures, technical data. The value is not just reading them; it is knowing how and also questioning. So in I think you might be aware that in research there is thing that 5W and or something, sorry, 5H and 1W. There's a how you have to question, how you have to understand, what you have to understand, why. So these things I just don't remember the right acronym for that. But there you have to just question what does this mean for the wider goal, wider foreign policy. Could this development can impact any
Yes.
relation of India, if you are taking India with other country. So the habit of going deeper, because in our background we understand things, but we kind of don't go into deeper understanding of it. So like I explained, when I read about rare earth trade war is happening, and I was
Yes.
like, what is this rare earth? And I went into digging it and understood,
Yes.
okay, rare earth doesn't mean rare earth. It is not even rare. It is available in a very much amount, as we have discussed in our previous podcast also,
Yes.
that how this is different and why the name is there. So these things, and it every answer gives you more questions, and every question, for every question you need to know more answer. You should not stop understanding there. So there is this thing that for day to day and skill development, you have to keep questioning yourself, keep challenging yourself, and then only you can make a journey for yourself. So moreover, where I have been explaining in my last answer also, that you have to develop a
Yes.
different perspective on the same issue. Like same issue has a different view from military, economic angle, diplomatic calculation, but you have to just understand where I can build a knowledge gap, and that knowledge gap can be your key strength in the whole world. Because if you're talking the same thing, people will obviously listen, but they won't remember you. So you have to make an impact with something unique on the table. And by to bring that unique on the table, you have to understand things first. You have to question that deeper. So only thing I would say, that if you want to develop that, just go deep, just go understand more, and keep questioning things from because even for the technical person, we that those people who have a technical expertise, they always question things, they always go into deep insights to understand why this is happening, how this can happen, what is the solution, instead of just taking things like it. So that is the whole thing. You have to be change your approach towards your learning, and there you go, you will make your own space and pace for a better journey, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe this has been a great conversation, and we have reached the end of the part one. I'm very much excited to have the next part of the conversation, because that is going to be kind of a bit of an elevation of what we had discussed. It will be some of the points will be carry forward again into the next conversation. So stay tuned for the part two of the episode. We'll be coming back soon. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you find our podcast insightful, then please like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next episode. Thank you.